What did the janitor skeleton say when it finally came out of the closet? Hi, that's not what it said, but I am Angel, and this is the Authentic Action Podcast. Welcome. Today's episode is going to tackle the question, why is it important to learn to feel your feelings and express them in healthier ways? This is the topic of a book that I've been writing coincidentally called The Shift, which will be done any minute now, hopefully. um, and it's a topic that's dear to my heart and I feel like is more important than ever because many of us are either feeling a lot of feelings and being dysregulated a lot of the time, or, even if we're not thinking of it as dysregulated, acting a fool, not really having full access to our brain because we are emotionally activated, or we are suppressing, intentionally suppressing our emotions, or unintentionally repressing our emotions, which is essentially unconscious suppression, like when we overeat or drink or do drugs a lot of times, or watch television a lot of times. A lot of those are ways that we are unconsciously repressing our emotions because maybe we're feeling a big lot of anger or anxiety or fear, uncertainty, and, this growing sense of existential threat that has been highly profitable for pretty much all the networks to capitalize on lately. So there's all these good, valid reasons to feel emotional. So it makes sense that a lot of times it's just too much and gets overwhelming. And so we just want to shut them all down. And the reason I started writing my book, The Shift, and the reason I'm talking about this topic right now is because I think that suppression and repression of emotions just makes us basically emotionally stunted. It's a lot like um, not working out because we're weak and then we just get weaker. It's very similar. And in my book, I refer a lot to emotional fitness because I think of it as a holistic thing, a lot like physical fitness. And it takes practice. It takes practice feeling your feelings and expressing them in healthy ways. And at first, it's usually messy and imperfect. And actually, honestly, through the whole thing, I think it's a little bit messy and imperfect because there's really not just one way to be an emotionally mature human being. There's always these internal and external changing factors that make it a great dynamic dance, but keep us on our keep us in that dance, always learning about ourselves, that continual unfolding. I'm looking at my notes to see if I forgot anything in my introduction, and I didn't mention our sponsors, which are me, myself, and I, and some of my endeavors, including the Sleeping Dragons Company, where we carry essential oil blends, phthalate-free perfumes and fragrances, and other supplies for enhancing your creativity and inspiring your self-love capacity. So check it out over on Etsy, or you might soon find a link to it on my personal website. In any case, that's sleepingdragonsco.com. Should get you there. And also my book, The Shift, and I have other books on Amazon. You can find me through my author page, Gabrielle Angel Lily, or hopefully somewhere around here there should be a link you can click on either directly to Amazon and or you could sign up on my website and get on my mailing list and check out all the links to all my things there. So I encourage you to do that. It does help me out a lot. Like, subscribe, give me a review. All those things do help. And I appreciate you if you do. So thank you. Thank you also for being you and let me be me. Let's get back to the topic at hand, why it's important to feel your feelings more fully and express them in healthier ways. Of course, I and I think many of us, I certainly am one of these people who has much of my life expressed my feelings quite dramatically at times. Of course, I've done some suppressing and repressing too. I think we all do. Um, but if you asked people who know me, they would probably say I'm an emotional person and maybe even an intense person, passionate person. A lot of those words that go along with someone who, uses her hands a lot and is quite expressive. And I used to think that was pretty much all good and justified. And I still think there are aspects of it that are good, but I've come to recognize, I've learned through decades of turbulence in my relationships that can be upsetting to other people and that my methodology, my strategies, my tools were pretty rudimentary. Like I learned them when I was an infant, when I was a toddler, when I was in grade school, when I was in junior high. And of course, I've learned, I continuously learn. So, but many of those fundamental strategies didn't evolve much once I got to be through those teen years, really, and that until I got to be maybe in my 40s or now in my 50s, where I'm really starting to realize that I have a lot of work to do on my own communication skills and on my own capacity to feel my feelings without being overwhelmed, without overwhelming the people around me, and without, hopefully while still being true to myself and expressing them in healthy ways. Because the thing is, any emotion, even if it's one of those that we consider air quotes bad, like anger, which I will just give you, in case you didn't catch it in the air quotes quote, I don't think any emotions are really bad or good, but it is how we respond to them. And there are some, like anger, that are often thought of as bad and so frequently repressed. And what happens when we repress unconsciously or suppress consciously an emotion is that eventually it basically like festers inside. It's like having a bunch of tabs open on the computer. I like that analogy. And eventually things just start to malfunction. And then if you continue to repress and suppress, you can have a meltdown or have to, press reset, start and restart. Um, and that's to use that analogy of the computer when you're talking about your human body. You might get through the day and get to sleep and get to that reset, or you might blow up at someone. You might blow up at your dog or your child or your wife or your husband after you've gotten home from a hard day at work, not expressing your feelings. I think this is something most of us are familiar with on one end or the other or both. I think I've been on all ends of that equation myself personally. And so not only does it eventually come out, and often at a an unplanned, inopportune time, and in a dramatic, often sort of sometimes very detrimental way, but also while it's in the body being suppressed, simmering, it is causing damage. And this took me a long time to figure out as well. I've had autoimmune issues most of my life, but started being debilitating in my teens. And I manage them now fairly well with diet and exercise, yoga, meditation, art therapy, talking, And that's part of what has really inspired me into being here today, sharing with you, because in my own wellness journey, I have learned, for one, that a lot of our current systems, at least in this Western, modern Western is what I was trying to say. This Western modern um, system that we have for healthcare, which is really more about disease management, when you look at it, really doesn't deal very well with chronic disease. And I believe one of the reasons that it doesn't is because it's missing this very important critical piece about how we are emotional beings. We're feeling creatures. It's really the awesome, special thing that makes us different. We have the capacity to use our emotions to check in with our alignment, with our consciousness, and use our free will to decide what we want to do based on what we feel is right or wrong. This is all determined by knowing ourselves. And the more we can learn to feel our feelings, learn to speak the language of our emotions, the more we will know ourselves, the better. Like, not only can we know ourselves, but we can be our own best friend instead of our own worst enemy. And I think many of us know that feeling of self-sabotage and being our own worst enemy. And it's a cliche for a reason because it's very common. And certainly I have done it a lot, self-sabotage that is, and been my own worst enemy. Um, and it's certainly what I see the most in working with clients and dealing with friends and family. So I know I'm not alone in that. Um, there are some that believe that we should be less emotional, and I want to speak to that because I think there is some validity in that. And a couple of my favorite coaches who are men, the women seem to be more aware of how valuable and inevitable our emotional capacity is, or our emotions are. I shouldn't say our capacity, because it's really what I'm working on when I talk about emotional fitness. It is about increasing our capacity to feel our emotions, to handle our emotions without becoming dysregulated or having to shut down. And when we become dysregulated, that is often when we come across as what most people think of as or call emotional or too emotional, where we are not in our whole right minds and instead we are overwhelmed by those emotions. And a lot of times the ones that people notice the most are those air quotes negative ones like anger or sadness. But there's also apathy, which is right next to depression, and that's sometimes really hard to notice, but very damaging to the body. And even extreme like mania, which often gets confused with joy or happiness. It's like a form, a shade of joy and happiness, but mania has an obsessive quality and an unconscious quality, or a out of alignment aspect to it, which makes it disruptive to the body. And instead of like feeling whole and aligned and calm and clear in your joy, in your happiness, you can feel, excited and giddy and can't stop, thinking about a thing. And while that can be enjoyable, and I certainly love me some of that, sometimes now and then, it can also, it's not a good place to make choices from. It interferes with our higher level thinking, and it is a form of dysregulation of sorts, as is like extreme lust or sexual attraction. Those are all things that take us out of our more balanced nervous system, where our nervous system is balancing itself and playing back and forth and dancing in a well-balanced, coherent manner. And any of those more extreme emotions can take us, out of that coherence and into a more uh, fluctuating, more chaotic state. And again, some of that can be like serve a purpose and even be enjoyable. And staying there too long can wreck relationships, can wreck lives, can wreck your body. It's wrecked my body at times. That's what I believe at least. So even though I agree that dysregulation or being too emotional does get in our way of making good choices and having healthy relationships, I don't agree that suppression and unconscious repression is the answer. Instead, I think developing more emotional fitness, learning to have a greater capacity for feeling our feelings more fully is actually the path to enjoying our lives, living those rich, full lives of meaning, not having to just have some bland, mediocre, almost meaningless or completely meaningless existence, because we've suppressed all our emotions and feelings. Really, our emotions and feelings are not only how we make our choices about what we want and what feels right and wrong, but how we derive meaning from our lives, how we get our sense of purpose and our feelings of connectedness and, um, yeah, everything that seems to make life worthwhile to me. So I think we should really think hard and not too long about suppressing and getting rid of our emotions or decreasing emotions. And I hear a lot of people that I respect and admire, and again, a lot of them are men, and so I think they probably are just out of touch with some of that. And the particular men I'm thinking of actually do have loving partners, female partners, and so I think they're probably also out of touch with how out of touch some men can be without that partnership of a female. And as a woman, I can attest that I just have a lot of emotions, and I think generally speaking, women do. That correlates with our hormones, and it's, I believe biologically uh, wired in to help us take care of children. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I think it can be both a liability and an asset and an asset. And one of my biggest missions in all of this is to make it more of an asset and less of a liability, and to help especially men, but everyone broadly speaking, see the value in our emotions, in our capacity to feel feelings, to make meanings by making stories, by looking back and forming stories about what we feel, about our memories of what's happened. This is how we derive our sense of purpose and meaning and connection together. And I think it's super important and super awesome. So I really hope we don't lose it. And I am going to continue to do what I can to help enhance it, keep it alive, spark the flames of it, carry the embers of it. Um, Part of that is in our capacity to engage in storytelling. We do it sometimes consciously and deliberately, and many times unconsciously and undeliberately. It's just the way that our brains work is that we tell stories to ourselves and to each other. Um, it's how we make sense again and meaning of our lives. So, to reiterate, I believe that emotional fitness and learning to become dysregulated less often, and also learning to recognize when we're dysregulated and get ourselves back to that coherent state is a key to living a better life, both individually and actually societally, collectively. Even though there's a lot of finger pointing going on, I like to remind us that that finger is, anytime we point a finger at someone else, as they say, we're pointing three fingers back at ourselves. And I do think it's a great practice that I try to use when we realize we're dysregulated and blaming someone or something else, to reflect back on ourselves and think, how am I doing that thing? Or how is it serving me to blame this person or this concept? Because it might be that we're actually kind of a side tangent, but very related thing is that we create chemical combinations, neurochemistry in our bodies when we experience emotions. And our neurochemistry creates those emotional cascades. They're like a chicken and egg scenario where they can get into positive feedback loops. And also we can interject some control with diet and exercise and breathing and our own thoughts, which is a lot of what my book is about, is how can you take more control, more responsibility, and more control so that you can gain more emotional fitness by practicing these tools of re-regulating yourself, of tonifying the vagus nerve. And again, all of that starts by learning to recognize when you're dysregulated, taking ownership of that and deciding to get yourself regulated as quick as possible. When you realize how detrimental it is in your life to go about making decisions and carrying on conversations and trying to navigate relationships from a dysregulated state, it can be shocking. It was a little shocking to me, sometimes still is, but the more I practice it and give myself grace and compassion, which I encourage you to practice as well, because is really a key component to this work. The more that I do that, the easier it gets, and the more I'm able to recognize my own dysregulation more quickly. And instead of adding to it and getting in that positive feedback loop of dysregulation, using it to flip the switch, as I call it. I think of it like a Mobius switch kind of. It's like an inverted, like one of those. I'm making like a Tai Chi or a pushing hands motion. It's a little Mobius. It's a twist and a flip. In any case, that motion energetically, when you notice you're dysregulated, instead of just digging your heels into it or beating yourself up or grinding or pushing against it, you can use it as a quick little momentum, like a little trick to think, oh, yay me, I realized it. And now I can use my tools and I can give myself grace and compassion and patience. Because another little key component is if you try to force yourself to use the tools and get there quickly, sometimes it can take longer. So just accept that failure is part of the process. I know I'm getting out of focus over here and I'm not sure why, but recognizing that failure is part of the process and accepting that and maybe even loving it even is a good way to more quickly bring yourself back into that regulated state. It is amazing how quickly stress and dysregulation can dissolve and we can snap back into that regulated state. A tool that I will share with you that I've been using a lot is humming. Now, I do it with a specific sound healing vagus nerve tonifying course, but I wanted to share just a very simple tool, which is you can put your hands, even if you're just talking, you can put your hands gently on your throat and feel the vibration if you're talking, or you can try humming. Mm, 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 mm. Mm. Anyway, it doesn't matter what tone, and it doesn't have to be in tone. But the point is to notice that vibration. And you don't actually have to use your hands to notice it, but it's helpful to do that, especially at first, because it helps you make that connection between making sound with your vocal cords and vibrating your neck here and right here in your neck, and actually running from deep in your brain all the way through the center of your main center of your body into all your organ systems is your vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve has been found to be highly correlated, pardon me, with your emotional state and your emotional regulation. It helps regulate our heart rate and our breathing rate and our temperature and our digestion and all that neurochemistry. And so when you tonify the vagus nerve by literally by stimulating it with vibration, as in when you're speaking, but also humming and singing is a great way to do that. Um, you are building resilience. It's like sort of like bouncing on the mini trampoline or maybe walking. So maybe it's not, you know, heavy lifting kind of fitness building, but it's that regular kind of showing up and tonifying, which actually over time is some of the best, if not the best kind of regular work, work that you can do to develop fitness in a similar way that it works for physical fitness, where you show up regularly and you do things and maybe you push yourself if you want to build more muscle, but it's really about, you know, being the kind of person who is physically active regularly. Similarly with emotional fitness, it's about being the kind of person who is taking care of your emotional state regularly. And that is going to take different forms at different points in your life. But if you commit to yourself to make that a priority, then you can start to find, try things, find what works, find what doesn't work. It's worth mentioning that some things aren't going to work. Not everything works for everybody all the time. That's again what my book is trying to offer, is like a menu of different tools that work for different people in different states at different times, so that you can just choose one or two new tools to try out. And mostly I want to help convince you that it's worth deciding to take control of your own emotions and enhancing your own emotional fitness, and that you are worthy of taking that control, of making that leap, of making that decision, and that we all need each other to do that, because civilization is really depending on it. Collectively, we are the totality of all of our individual capacities to hold our own feelings, to make meaning, to engage in healthy dynamic dances with each other, and have these wonderful relationships that we're capable of having when we're regulated and we're in our full, whole, calm, coherent states. I think we all know ourselves and others to be in that spectrum. What beautiful, wonderful, vibrant creatures we are when we are coherent. And not that we're not vibrant when we're chaotic and stuff too, but I think you would agree that that's best kept in small doses, and spread out a little bit. Not everybody all at the same time, or we become quite dangerous. And I think that it's worth contemplating what kind of world we might create if we tip the scales and like more than half of us start to be able to recognize when we're dysregulated and bring ourselves back to that regulated state, become emotionally and physically and mentally and financially fit. And as I like to say, fitness is freedom. So more fit and more free. And really that has to do with our free will, because you can't exercise your free will to its fullest capacity if you are not able to regulate your own emotions and, use your body and your mind to its, maybe not even to its fullest capacity. Most of us don't even have any clue what that is, but even to just a greater capacity than you're using it right now. Most of us are using a tiny fraction of our capacity actually. So I really hope I've inspired you, convinced you, at least made you curious. Maybe you want to just look things up to prove me wrong, and that would be a great way in to start to explore this idea of emotional fitness, of taking more personal responsibility for your own emotional fitness. I want to mention again, even though I've mentioned it several times, that I'm writing this book. I'm really excited to get it out and in your hands. And one of the things that I've created while I was writing this book is a PDF that I'm offering for free to anyone who would like it. You just have to give me your email and I will send it to you. And it's just a glossary of over 100 tools that I have found. Most of them I've tried out myself. Some of them I haven't, but I've researched all of them. I've run across them and most of them in many, many different avenues, and they are free and simple tools that any of us can use to help heal ourselves, to help develop better emotional resilience, emotional fitness, emotional intelligence, and also most of them help with our mental and physical and sometimes financial and, relational fitness, all that. It's all interconnected, right? So, um, I'm looking at my notes again to see. It can be tricky at first. And so, if you would like to find more support, I encourage you to connect with me. I am developing a community, school community right now, and I have a couple of Facebook communities. So connect with me there and see what resonates with you. I have a practical healing community and an empowerment tribe and a joy project. Those are over in the Facebook communities. And then I have a authentic action academy on Facebook and over in the school community. And I would love to see you in any of those and help support you in your own wellness journey. I also do a little bit of private coaching and consulting. So all of that can be accessed through my website at GA Lily. For right now, I'm working on my website. Again, it's under a bit of construction, but it should be up and at least functional enough to get you those links to the right places. Um, yeah, my book is coming out soon with lots of great tools and hopefully a pep talk to it's like meant to be like stepping stones across that big river of I don't know how to feel my feelings and they're overwhelming. So hopefully it will be of value to some of you, or at least one of you. It's been helpful to me just in creating it, so that's been good. I can say that much. And I would like to wrap up with my very silly joke because that's a thing I'm into lately. And I just want to make sure that I got to all my notes. I wanted to say, even if you really only need to learn to love and listen to yourself, and really know thyself, watch yourself unfold your whole life. It's worth becoming more emotionally fit so that you can feel your feelings more fully and get to know yourself more fully so that you can feel more vibrantly alive, so you can live a life that's more satisfying and fulfilling and meaningful to you. And as I mentioned, in doing that, I believe if we all do that, or even just 5% more of us do that for starters, and then maybe 10% more of us, and maybe, if we tip that 50% scale, but really it only takes 5% of us because a person who stepped fully into their wholeness is like the ocean compared to a shot glass, as one of the mentors who inspires me greatly. Kasia Urbaniak. I think I just butchered her name. Anyhow, she's a great inspiration to me among many. And the point being, if you can step into your wholeness, and that takes increasing your capacity to feel your feelings, then you have the capacity of the ocean to create, to manifest potential possibilities into this realm of reality. And right now, most of us are working with like a shot glass of capacity, as she would have, as she does put it. So I'm trying to give credit where credit is due because I took that, borrowed that blatantly from Kasia. But anyway, thank you, Kasia. And thank you, listeners, for joining me today. Thank you for being you and let me be me. Thank you for joining me and all of us on this wonderful journey called life. It really is exciting. Just never know what's going to happen. And I hope that you will remember that it is too important to take it too seriously. So try to lighten up a little bit, have a little laugh on me. It's going to be all right. Everybody dies, nobody gets out alive. One day you'll die too, but all the rest of the days you will survive. On that note, what did the janitor's skeleton say when it finally came out of the closet? Supplies! You're welcome. I'll be seeing you soon. Ciao for now. Peace.